Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. I'm Pinky Webb. Today on the program, President Rodrigo Duterte certifies the indemnity bill for COVID-19 vaccines as urgent. The president also issued a memorandum order allowing local governments to go beyond the 15% cap on advance payments for vaccine procurement. But where is the country in the world's vaccine race? Some senators say that the Philippines is lagging behind. Vaccine czar Carlito Galvez joins us in the show. President Rodrigo Duterte certified the indemnity fund bills for COVID-19 vaccines as urgent. The chief executive also issued a memorandum order allowing local governments to go beyond the 15% limit on advance payments for vaccine procurement. Trisha Terada has more.
Vaccine czar Carlito Galvez says the COVID-19 immunization rollout is still possible this February despite issues in getting the supplies. That's if other donated vaccines will get emergency use authorization. Without EUA, the vaccines cannot enter the country.
Realistically, pwede pa yung possible pa po yung February. But most likely talaga ang ano po natin na yung sa COVAX, titingnan po natin kasi yung requirement po sa kanila po talaga panggagaling yun at nakita natin na nagkaroon din ng delay ang rollout worldwide yung COVAX.
Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque says the delivery of 600,000 donated vaccines from Sinovac may be delayed if the FDA won't be able to issue an EUA by February 18th.
Sinasabi ko lang po ito para kwentas claras, no? Kasi syempre po, kailangan nilang to make arrangements para sa shipment ng Sinovac, no? So just to manage expectations, dahil inaantay po natin yung EUA ng Sinovac, kinakailangan po lumabas ngayong araw. Kung hindi po, baka hindi rin po makarating ng 23.
Contrary to the palace's earlier statement that Sinovac doses can be delivered pending EUA, the new rule is vaccines must have an EUA before entering the country. Despite all these, the government assures it's on track with the vaccination program. But many ask, why are there no vaccines in the country yet? Malacanang cites a statement from the COVAX facility saying there will be delays in the deliveries of Pfizer vaccines in general because of the sub-zero transportation and logistics requirement. As for the Philippines, Galvez says Pfizer wants a bilateral agreement with an indemnification clause. The Philippines already signed it, and the government is currently waiting for Pfizer's counter-approval. With AstraZeneca, Galvez says everything's okay in terms of documentation. The delay now stems from supply, the manufacturing and distribution aspect. Purchased doses will supposedly come from Thailand and Serum Institute of India, while supplies from COVAX will come from South Korea. As for Sinovac, like what has been mentioned, it needs an EUA before it can be delivered. The FDA is still waiting on Sinovac to submit some requirements. Trisha Terada, CNN, Philippines.
Aside from public health facilities and local government units, the Armed Forces is also gearing up. For its critical role in the vaccine rollout, it has identified more than 40 military camps nationwide that can serve as vaccination centers. The AFP will also deploy personnel to augment healthcare workers. Our senior correspondent, David Santos, has that story.
Zamboanga, Basilan, Hulo, Tawi-Tawi.
Navy Captain Elmer Toriado preparing for his next mission. His ship, BRP Davao del Sur, one of 4 Navy vessels that will transport life-saving vaccines, now awaiting orders.
Ito siya.
The ship has 2 reefers or walk-in refrigerated cargo rooms.
The room where we are now has minus 20 degrees Celsius temperature. This is currently where they store fish and meat products. But once they get an assignment for the rollout, this will all have to give way for the precious vaccines.
The other room is kept at +3 for vegetables and fruits. Vaccines that only require 2 to 8 degrees Celsius can be stored here. Another option, load the vaccines on refrigerated container vans.
6 to 7 kaya, sir.
Oh, 6 to 7 container vans.
Once the rollout begins, all modes of transport will be needed to ship the vaccines nationwide. In remote communities, military assets will have to take over. Ones stationed in the Visayas or Mindanao, Navy ships, for example, can travel overnight to reach island communities. The Air Force's new Black Hawks also among those being eyed to ferry vaccines to the hinterlands.
Hindi naman i-carry lahat ng Black Hawks yung vaccines because we have other assets, air assets that could pagtutulungan po ng ating air and maybe naval and ground assets.
Question now is how viable is military transport to carry ultra-sensitive vaccines?
Hindi mo sa mararamdaman talaga na yung magalaw.
Sa normal sea state condition, hindi, very stable.
So all of these have to be evaluated. Of course, we don't want to waste any of the vaccines. We want to make sure that everything is followed up to the standard.
The AFP will also deploy its medical corps to help augment government healthcare workers carry out vaccinations.
Katulad ng isang sundalo na anytime we are tasked to do the job, we are ready.
And being able to contribute to the end or control of that pandemic is something that is very important for us.
David Santos, CNN Philippines.
We will be taking a short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Health officials are looking into the possibility that the country may have developed its own COVID-19 variants. The Health Department in Central Visayas says the Philippine Genome Center detected 2 new mutations in samples from Cebu City. They are calling it variants of concern and were seen in 37 samples. But DOH Region 7 says there is no need to panic because the patients have been isolated and quarantined. Cebu City has been seeing a case surge in recent weeks. It has surpassed more than 200 infections per day. It is unknown if these were caused by the potential new variants.
So late last year pa lang, and this was also in concordance with the global concern of variants. And we actually noticed that we already had an inkling because of the second wave or the second surge that there is something going on. So that's the reason why Dr. Loreche and the rest of the group, especially at the Regional Epidemiology Unit, which I also coordinate, we were actually pressing now to do a biosurveillance. So that's the reason why we were and thank you for the Philippine Genomic Center for allowing us to send the specimens, and lo and behold, indeed they were able to detect, I'm sorry for the lack of the right term, a homegrown variant in our locality.
Meantime, DOH Region 7 also released a statement on the 2 overseas Filipino workers who tested positive in Cebu, even after getting vaccinated abroad. The agency says the 43-year-old man from the United Arab Emirates received 2 doses of China's Sinopharm vaccine, while the 25-year-old woman from Canada received 1 dose of the United States' Pfizer vaccine. Both OFWs have remained asymptomatic. DOH Region 7 says this stresses the importance of vaccines in preventing severe and clinical disease. Nearly a year into the pandemic lockdowns, economic managers are calling to loosen restrictions to revive the ailing economy. Mayors in Metro Manila put the proposal to a vote and say they will now recommend easing quarantine rules next month. Navota's Mayor Toby Tiangco says those who voted in favor of the shift to MGCQ were Manila Mayor Isko Moreno, Makati Mayor Abby Binay, and Mandaluyong Mayor Menchi Abalos. Tiangco says he voted against it along with Marikina Mayor Marcy Teodoro, Muntinlupa Mayor Jaime Fresnedi, San Juan Mayor Francis Zamora, and Valenzuela Mayor Rex Gatchalian, while Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte and Pateros Mayor Miguel Ponce III did not disclose their votes. Our AC Nichols tells us some mayors had reservations before they arrived at the decision.
It was a close vote, 9 against 8. The majority favored a more relaxed Modified General Community Quarantine or MGCQ beginning March 1st. Economic managers have been pushing for looser quarantine restrictions to help the economy recover. And they've apparently convinced most of the Metro Manila mayors.
It's just a matter of labeling yung GCQ at MGCQ. Kung tutuusin mo, halos lahat ng ginagawa mo sa MGCQ, parang ginagawa mo na ngayon eh. No? Halos konti na lang ang difference.
In MGCQ areas, children as young as 10 years old are allowed to go out. But mayors agreed the 15 to 65 age restriction in the metro will stay.
Once may konting surge or once makita ang numero na may konting effect, talagang a-action ang kaagad. Yun po ang importante dito.
Abalos adds mayors can still order localized lockdowns in case of outbreaks. Navotas City Mayor Toby Tiangco and Marikina City Mayor Marcy Teodoro were among those who voted to retain the General Community Quarantine or GCQ status. Teodoro said he's just voicing out the sentiment of his constituents.
Takot yung mga tao, definitely. Kasi wala naman nakikita action sa gobyerno.
President Duterte will have final say on whether the recommendation to shift to MGCQ will be implemented. AC Nichols, CNN Philippines.
The Education Department has yet to decide on the controversial summer break for students. Education Secretary Leonor Briones says they are carefully weighing the situation as they come up with a decision. She notes school opened relatively late in the Philippines compared to schools abroad. Right now, some students in other countries are already on break.
We have a lot of catching up to do. Remember, other countries opened in June. We opened in October. So, pag sabihin mong i-extend mo yung vacation, we have to balance also the impact of another series of no classes and so on when the children are asking for academic ease.
The Education Department is also studying the resumption of face-to-face classes and has set stringent conditions once it is allowed by President Rodrigo Duterte. Among these are LGU and parental consent, sufficiency of facilities and health protocols. Briones adds, according to UNICEF, the Philippines is the only country in the region that has not yet resumed any form of face-to-face classes. We'll be taking a short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Consumers face bigger financial burdens this year, among them surging food prices led by pork, chicken, and vegetables. Melissa Lopez digs deeper into the reasons behind the rising costs and the Filipinos' face of hunger in the first part of her special report.
Sky-high food prices are now part of the new normal faced by Filipinos this year. The higher cost of food has been burning a hole into family pockets, on top of additional costs like face mask and alcohol, and even for online classes of their kids. For the country's poorest, it's getting harder and harder to eat 3 square meals a day. Market vendors are also feeling the pinch.
Dati ma'am, nakaka-20 kami. Ngayon ma'am, masaya na kami pag naka 5,000 na po. May mga gulay kaming natitira dyan o marireject na. Yun na lang din po ang ginagawang pang-ulam din namin.
Kung hindi magbababa yung magsusupply sa amin, hindi namin pwede ibenta. Alam nga naman malugi kami, paano na kaming kakain? Ngayon lang nangyari talaga to eh. Grabe na talaga ang taas ng ng puhunan. Tapos mura benta.
The Agriculture Department blames limited supplies for the surging prices. The string of typhoons that hit the country in November last year ruined vegetable plantations. For pork, the African swine fever outbreak in more than 30 provinces forced hog raisers to cull thousands of pigs to prevent the spread of the disease. The price of chicken rose too as a result of shifting demand. There's also that problem with middlemen said to be manipulating prices to make big gains. But the government insists there's still enough food to go around.
Wala naman tayong food crisis. Nandyan sa bigas, marami tayong supply. Itong karning baboy ang mayroon tayong potential shortfall ng itong taon na ito, 400,000 metric tons. At ito na yung aangkatin para mayroon tayong supply augmentation sa bansa.
The agency hopes to plug the supply gaps and bring down prices with the help of farmers, traders, and retailers through a National Food Security Summit, tentatively set April 7 to 8th. That's 2 months from now. Senator Francis Pangilinan, who served as Presidential Assistant for Food Security for former President Noynoy Aquino, said the DA needs to speed up.
That's too late. Diba? We should have the food summit last month. Almost 70% of the expenses of a family, particularly the poor, goes to food. So hunger ang kapalit niyan dahil mataas ang presyo.
A staggering 59 million Filipinos, or more than half the population, say they did not have consistent access to good food from 2017 to 2019. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization reported last year. 63% of them could not afford nutritious food on a daily basis. The numbers could be worse due to the pandemic. People need to eat healthy to fight the threat of COVID-19. And for those who can't even afford a decent meal, starvation rears its ugly head. Melissa Lopez, CNN Philippines.
Vaccine czar Carlito Galvez was supposed to guest on the show today. Unfortunately, he is and has been unavailable. Thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.